Okay. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. This is a surprise meeting if you weren't expecting to attend the Shelton Metropolitan Park District meeting, but that meeting is now called to order. And we're going to immediately recess out of the Parks meeting and have a public hearing on the 2017 Shelton Metropolitan Parks District final budget, which will be presented by City Manager Ryan Wheaton and Acting Accountant Manager Megan Crossan.
Thanks, Commissioner and Mayors. We are going to take a look at the final budget for the SMPD for 2017. While we're getting that up, we're seeing very similar revenue to what we've had in the last 2 years. So in the information in your packets, you'll see that next year we have revenue estimates of $446,498, which is up just over $4,000 from what we had budgeted for 2016. Not much changes in looking at expenditures. Obviously, we have more beginning cash moving into 2017 than we have in the last couple of years. But in terms of what we're expecting in revenues and in expenditures, we're seeing slight increases from last 2 years. Any questions about the SMPD budget?
No.
No.
Comments, Mark?
I think it's worth noting the pro-rationing that SMPD has seen the last couple of years, and it's all likely in 2017.
So we expect that there will be, well, it's almost a guarantee at this point that we will see some pro-rationing in terms of the revenue that does actually come in. It would be nice to see this, but we do expect that it will likely be less than what we're forecasting at this point. And that's something that we've seen for the last few years.
Okay. All right. Do either of you have any comments or questions?
Nope.
Could you explain for everyone out there what the pro-rationing means?
Do you want to get this one?
I'd appreciate that.
So the pro-rationing has occurred for 3 years now to the Shelton Metropolitan Park District, and what happens is, I'm not an expert in on this on tax law, but there's a statutory limit for basic property tax of $5.90 per thousand assessed value in the city. As a junior taxing district, the SMPD falls down the list to the city, the county, hospital, library, I believe, are the entities on top of that. So those entities make their requests for the taxes they need for the upcoming year 2017. As it gets closer to that $5.90 statutory limit, there might be less available than what the SMPD has requested. So that would bring down the amount of revenue that the SMPD would bring in. We've actually seen revenue decrease by 30% over the last 3 years within the SMPD, and we're anticipating that in 2017 as well, because city valuations have not gone up, so property values are the main reason why that pro-rationing has taken place.
Okay, thank you.
So as I know that the real estate market has picked up and homes are selling for more, gradually more. So that is what we have to look at to improve our outlook as far as the funds coming in.
Yeah, it's directly related to the property values, exactly.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are still based on some property values over the last year rather than kind of the current property value. So we'll see a lag in how that recovery is going to take place for the SMPD.
Okay. Does that number change drastically every year? Like if we did have a property value increase across the board, would we see those increases the following year, or does it take a couple years?
The county has already submitted the valuation or determined the valuation, so I believe those, I don't know the timeline that they base those on, to tell you the truth. We can find that out, but generally it does lag behind. It's, the sales happening now aren't going to affect that valuation for 2017 tax purposes.
Be nice if we could adjust quarterly, huh? Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the public have testimony? This is an opportunity for public testimony. None? All right. So I will close the public hearing and return to the regular meeting. The consent agenda, have you all, am I right on this?
There's nothing on the consent agenda.
Okay. Okay, so,
The only thing is the new business.
okay, so that's what we're.
Mark's gonna handle that.
Okay. All right. So no consent agenda, no old business, new business.
Thank you. Pleased to present to you the appointment of Josh Johnson today to the Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Committee. Josh has attended a couple meetings with the advisory committee. We have currently, we had an opening due to Marilyn Vogler's resignation. So with your approval tonight, I'm asking that Josh's appointment would extend through December 31st of 2017 to fill out that term that Marilyn was serving at that time. And Josh can get busy with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and helping us out here.
Okay, is Josh here?
I saw him in the back, yeah. He didn't anticipate
Oh. Okay.
speaking tonight, so
Okay. How you
doing,
we'll
Josh?
just
See you
we'll
back
recognize
there.
Josh and thank him for his.
Oh, is that you?
Yeah. So
We like to know the faces.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
This is an important advisory committee for
Yes.
For the department as well. We like to have citizen involvement at any time, at all times possible, to help us out in the decisions that we
Yeah.
bring to the commission and the park board.
Okay. So there is also an opportunity for public comment at this point, and no one has signed up. So I would like to invite my fellow commissioners. Do you have any comments?
No, I'm just excited.
No comments.
Okay.
Welcome aboard, Josh.
So we need a motion and a second in order to appoint Josh.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Josh Johnson to the term on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to replace Marilyn Vogler's position.
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. If there's no more comment, call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Yay, motion passes. Welcome aboard, Josh. Thank you. Thank you for your service. The next Shelton Metropolitan Parks Department special meeting will be on December 12th, 2016 at 2 p.m., and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. And now I would like to call to order the City of Shelton's commission meeting. Would you please stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on our business tonight is that we are going to go through a ceremony and welcome a new officer to the City of Shelton Police Force. And so, at this time, I'd like our police chief, Darren Moody, and our new police officer, Hector Diaz, to come up, and we are going to swear them in.
Mayor and citizens of Shelton, I'd like to introduce Hector Diaz, a new member of the family of the Shelton Police Department.
I met him before, but
He's the first full-time officer we've hired in 6 years here at the city of Shelton. He's a native Californian. He grew up in the Central Valley and speaks fluent Spanish. He is a Marine combat veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom. He has 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and he moved to the area in 2013 to be closer to family members. He started working for Mason County as a corrections officer, and then he saw the light and came over to Shelton Police Department. He took the entry-level test as a reserve officer for us, scored very well, came out on top. He was hired and attended the academy for the last 20 weeks. He received leadership awards from the academy, and he graduated November 22nd. This is to fill an officer vacancy from last year. That's how long it takes to get through the process, get him through the academy and trained. He's now starting his FTO period, so you'll see him on the streets of Fairfield, or Shelton. Shelton.
Thank you very much, Chief Darren Moody. All right, so I've got little breaks in this because I've been sworn into different things, and I hate it when the guy says 3 sentences and you gotta try and remember. So this may not be flowing exactly like the periods of the comments, but it's for you and me both that we get through this, okay? I, Hector Diaz, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Washington, and to abide by the Code of Ethics of the Shelton Police Department. And I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of police officer for the city of Shelton. Thank you very much, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is our weekly commission reports. Commissioner Moore, did you have some activities this week?
I do. Tomorrow, I have a Mason Transit Authority Board meeting. I also have a Housing Coalition Executive Board meeting. On Wednesday, I have nothing. On Thursday, I have a meeting in Olympia with the EPA Brownsville's Department. And that's it for this week.
All right, Commissioner McDowell?
Tuesday, I have my left board meeting tomorrow morning. Friday, and I got my dates mixed up, so this Friday is my Republican Women's meeting. I thought it was last week, but anyway. So I have that, and then Friday night, I'm going to be going to the Olympia Master Builders Awards Dinner in Olympia. So that should be fun. That's my week.
Thank you very much. Thursday, I will be attending an economic development event. It's a 5-region event out at the Little Creek Casino for the Economic Development Council. And then on Thursday, and then on Friday, I will be also attending another Economic Development Council board meeting. And that completes our weekly commission reports.
Excuse me, but as usual, there was something I missed. I will most likely attend the EDC meeting on Thursday as well.
Very good. Any other items to be placed on those commission meetings?
No.
That's it. Thank you very much. Okay, here is our first general public comment period. We have a few of them throughout this meeting because we have items that people are going to want to talk about. If you want to talk about the railroad, we're going to wait till a little later. But if you want to talk about anything else that's on your mind for the city of Shelton, this would be that opportunity. That's our general public comment period. So do we have someone signed up for that?
I didn't sign up, but I can.
Okay, did you want to talk about something involving the railroad? Just general public comment. Okay, if you could please come forward and sign up. They have a sheet here. And then
In the
we would love to-
meantime, Randy Lewis has
that
signed up for
general public comment period?
Yeah,
General? Okay, come on up, Randy. You can start speaking.
Hi, everybody. Randy Lewis. From time to time, Marilyn Vogler and others have come up here to talk about process. That is what I would like to do today. Recently, the commission did a wise thing and deferred a decision to spend $1 million or so for a well. The commission made the decision to gather information and explore other options. It turned out there were other options available. I also watched the tape of last week's special meeting about the pear orchard. It was very painful to watch the commission agonize over a difficult decision. Ideally, it would have been nice to be able to spend time evaluating potential options. However, in this particular situation, unlike for the well, my perception is that time pressure was being imposed, so the commission had to make a very painful decision. In my humble opinion, it was a correct decision. My hope going forward on any and all decisions is that the commission continue to take time to evaluate all options, presuming no time pressure exists. If there is time pressure on a decision, the source of the time pressure and why such time pressure exists should be made public. It does not matter who is advocating for a cause, be it a public requesting options over a pool, or be it a small group who wants to preserve part of Mason County history. I am hopeful that as Shelton recovers from the disasters that it is just beginning to discover, that the process expressed in the core values on the city website be honored. And by the way, the new website is great. Good job for whoever was involved doing that. I like that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I entered time too.
Yeah, you're getting better. Did we have anyone else then for general public comment?
I'm sorry, I didn't, yes. I'm sorry, I can't read your name. Okay. Yeah, that's
So I'm Jeannie Raywalt, and I'm the Executive Director for Mason Matters, replacing Kim Clint in April. And last January, the board for Mason Matters voted to become the coordinating organization for the Community Health Improvement Plan. And we are now calling that campaign Moving Mason Forward. And I'm working directly with Joe Sanchez, the health educator at Mason County Public Health, to go around and do presentations to organizations, nonprofits, government policymakers and leaders, school districts, about exactly what the Community Health Improvement Plan is, what the 7 priorities were that were identified in 2013, and how I can benefit, me and Mason Matters, the whole community. I watched the videotape also about the pear orchard, because as Master Gardener Coordinator, I was involved in that for several years. And I think this is an opportunity, instead of everybody being sad about the money going away, we started some great things, and there's new partnerships that can be built, and I can help facilitate that kind of thing. And we are going to be getting lots of data, local, real-time data, and it will be published on our website. We also want to be the hub for communication for the whole Mason County, and it's starting to bleed into other counties now. For a calendar, things like Randy said, you can just make sure that I'm on your list. You shoot it to me, and I'll put it on my website. And so the design is to be easy to get to whatever area you want to and know what's happening. So I just came to introduce myself and say we're ready to go. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Larson.
Hi. I just want to say that I think the city and the port missed a wonderful opportunity. Oh, let me start over first. One of my big dreams for Shelton for years and years is for all the industry to move off the waterfront, have the waterfront restored to a natural estuary, build a marina, make it nice, really improve the city. And I think the city and the port really missed a wonderful opportunity with Simpson's abandonment of their sawmills, and seems to me there's lots of room up on the airport where a mill could have been built, or maybe the land right outside of the prison. You could have got the county involved, the state and the federal government, and changed the waterfront into just a beautiful place, and Shelton would have been a whole lot nicer with a waterfront that wasn't industrialized. I don't know. A little late now, because Sierra Pacific's already building their new mill, and it's huge. I know this would all cost a lot of money. I'm just a dreamer, but that's all I want to say.
Thank you for your comments.
No others for general
Okay.
public comment.
Very good, thank you. All right, at this moment, what we're going to do is recess out of our regular meeting, commission meeting, And we are going to open a public hearing regarding the City of Shelton's 2017 final budget. So I'll turn this over to our city manager at this time.
We're getting there, Mayor.
No problem?
So this year, we're going to do something similar and then a couple things different. We're going to provide some comparisons. So not only in the presentation, but also in the budget packet that was presented to you guys for this meeting, we have made some comparisons to the last 2 years. What you see in front of you is I should mention that we have a projected balanced budget before we get going. For 2017, we're expecting a 5.7% increase in the total expenditures. A couple of the big ones that you'll note up above, the capital improvements, you notice a significant decrease. This is due to the projects that we had on board the last year in particular being reduced as we move forward, not the ones that we're going to talk about in the next couple weeks, but in general, we saw Lake Boulevard get finished. We've seen some other projects scale back, and we don't have large projects in that type moving forward to the next year. We do, however, have some money built in or expected for an intertie project, so you see a large increase in water. That's where that money comes from. EM&R, there is one piece of equipment that we're expecting to purchase, or we're asking in the budget to purchase, and that is an asphalt zipper. That's something that's been requested for a number of years and something that we continue to use every year. We are renting one now when we need it, but it's something that we expect to use more and more as we have TBD funds and we're going to do more road work. Moving forward to the reserves, we have forecasted and expect to have the operating and strategic reserves in place that have been mandated by the commission. Just to quickly differentiate between the two, our operating reserves allow us to handle the expenditures before revenue is received, so it gives us that coverage when we need to pay the bills. And then strategic reserves are expected to be at the level they have been the last 2 years, and those are the reserves that you are able to put to use if need be in a special situation. And again, these percentages, this is just a calculation based on operating expenses in our general fund. So the percentages that are listed here, this is just a calculation that we derived from those general fund numbers. Questions about those two?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, because I believe last year we took some money out of our reserves.
This is the budgeted information from last year, so
Okay.
not what remainder what was spent, but what you're seeing in front of you for all these will be the amount that was budgeted for each year, not the actuals.
Right.
We can get the actuals to you if you'd like.
Well, the question I have is if we took some of our reserves and used it last year, that we have a plan to pay that back.
That is, yes, that will be there.
Oh, it will be?
Moving forward to that,
Okay.
yeah. So the
Thank you.
number you see in strategic reserves, that 679,
Uh-huh.
710, that number will be there in 2017, and that's at the percentage that the commission has told us to fund.
Okay, thank you very much.
One new piece of information that we included with the budget message this year was just a little bit of information about our debt obligation. So what you have in front of you are 3 pieces of information: general government debt, water debt, and sewer debt. And then we broke down what our forecasted or projected payments are going to be for 2017. So you'll see that in total, we're expecting to make debt obligation payments of just over $3.2 million, totaling roughly $269,498 per month. As we look forward to some of the things that went into building this budget, and in your packets, you have information on everything that was requested in terms of new requests, what was funded and what wasn't funded. We want to take a little bit of time to talk about the things that helped us build this budget, and we have some department directors here in case we have questions about specific things. We continue to see indicators that reveal continued difficulties.
Excuse me.
Unemployment, bless you. Unemployment remains high, and one of the things that I think people feel locally is that the growth that's being experienced in the Thurston, Pierce, and King County hasn't hit Mason County as we would have hoped. We're still looking at adding a fraction of the jobs that have been lost in the last year and a half, but that, while not up to the level that we had 2 years ago, we do expect to see some growth in the next few months. One of the things that's troubled me as we look to the future is that we don't have a clear economic development plan, and I can't find evidence of a formalized business recruitment effort that's gone on at the city level. I know that the EDC has worked on different things, and the chamber works with retention of businesses that are in town, but that is an area that we would like to become more active with in 2017, not just working in that area, but also working with the partners that we have in the region to build a plan that we can point back to. Speaking of the partners, we've experienced in the last couple months that there are certainly partners in this region that are willing and ready to work with us on not only projects, but some of the efforts that we recognize are an issue. So strategic planning, regional planning, and some of the projects that we're trying to work through, we have heard interest from the port, the county, different entities that we would like to work with in planning for our future. This is something that we're going to need to build a little different collaboration than cities in Thurston County, cities in Kitsap County. We don't have other cities that we can necessarily partner with in the county. With that being said, we have to look to the county, to the port, to the PUD, transit, school district. We're going to have to work with other entities that are not the same type of organization that we are. We continue to look at the work that's been done on the Shelton Hills project over the last 10 plus years. Certainly this commission and past commissions have been more than welcoming for Hall Equities Group to come in and explore and eventually build in Shelton Hills. We don't see any reason that we would not be as welcoming, and in fact we're hoping that they fulfill the promises to step in and start working on it as soon as possible. So that's one thing that we will maintain, is that level of partnership with them. The other thing that we want to look at is prioritizing infrastructure projects for the needs of the citizens that are in town, and making sure that we're projecting appropriate growth levels over the next few years. And we're looking at a comprehensive plan amendment at this point, but we'll make sure that we're planning for appropriate growth, but at the same time taking care of some of the areas that this commission has identified as infrastructure needs throughout the city. As we look at some of the key departments where you'll make budget decisions, one is police. So retirements do impact what's going on right now. There's one in 2016. Across the department, we expect 3 in 2017. You do see increases in the police budget for 2017, and the main component there is that we are trying to meet the obligations from the 2015 contract that was signed. Some of those weren't factored into the 2016 budget, and we're paying for those essentially at the end of the year. We want to get ahead of that. Another area for concern is animal control. There is a deficit there. We're staffing 2 hours a day, where we are taking care of the animals that, as we learned last week, for the most part, our police officers are picking up. But that is an area that we'll need to look at potentially some partnerships and some volunteer support for that area. Community development, there were 3 people, but essentially 0.75 FTE spread across 3 people. That the budget in prior years, that 0.75 FTE across 3 people was funded out of Public Works. That will not be the case next year. So we've made a budget request and decision to maintain that staffing level. So we're talking about 3 people where we fully fund those 3 from the Community Development Department. Additionally, Mark Ziegler's taken over that department, and it now includes facilities and parks. So over the next few months, he will assess the needs of that department and look at whether or not there's a need for reorganization within the department for any positions that overlap, or looking at whether or not we need to add positions to facilitate some of the work that's going on in planning. One of the things that we expect by the midpoint of next year is that we will have our financial software up and running, and that we will be able to utilize one of the modules that at this point is not live, and that is an online permit tracking software. So if I'm a customer and I come in to planning, I put in a permit, at this point, I'm calling or I'm expecting a call back or an email. We would like for a focus on customer service to include the use of an online tracking software, which you've already purchased, but to this point, we have not been able to get up and running. And we're working on that with the vendor at this point so that we can get that up and running as soon as possible. We did see, or have seen, an increase in license and permit revenue this year. So we budgeted at just under 206,000. We're projecting almost 258,000 for the year. I guess it cuts both ways a little bit here, though, because we're projecting a modest increase next year. But one thing to note is at this point, permit revenue does not stay with the city. Because of the contract that we have with essentially an outside vendor, we contract for building inspection and building official services. All of the permit revenue at this point is not staying with the city, it's going to our contractor. So that is an area that I think we'll have some continued discussions in terms of our structure in planning, and also at some point it will be revisited, I'm sure, by the three of you to determine how effective the changes have been. In Public Works, we brought in staff in a little bit of a different way this year. We wanted to make sure that we prioritize the needs of frontline staff when we looked at requests, so that instead of making sure that admin had input in terms of what was going to be funded, that we also made sure that there was a focus on the folks working on the front line having the equipment and the funding that they need to do their job. With that in mind, we are evaluating, as you know, all the project costs and timelines. We brought forward SR3 in the Pear Orchard last week. Next week, we will bring forward recommendations for two others, Downtown Creeks, and also the Evergreen Safe Routes project. You see that down below, that we're trying to untangle some of these projects. That includes the Angleside Booster Pump Station, which we at this point have spent $1.67 million on, and the Upper Mountain View Pressure Zone, in particular the tank that we have in operation now but have no customers for. We are at a little over $6.6 million for that entire project. Utilities, streets, we saw some changes last year when the Transportation Benefit District funds were brought forward, and we expect to see some great opportunities for that. It will come forward in 2017. Water, we have, as I just mentioned, those problem projects that need to be addressed. We also have a plan for a 3% rate increase in water in 2017. This is a rate increase that has been planned for some time. In sewer, I'll skip to the rate increase there because additionally we have the first of 4 consecutive years where there's planned to be a 10% rate increase for each of the next 4 years, starting in 2017. We do have a strong potential for biosolid processing business. So a couple weeks ago, we brought forward and signed an ILA for an agreement with Mason County. When we go to the final touches, we'll talk briefly about some of the things that have come forward since then. This is an area that in the next few weeks we're going to bring forward to have you consider the potential that operation could potentially look a little bit different for us as we have more people interested in that. Solid waste this year is going to run roughly $100,000 deficit, which is similar to last year. We are able to cover that with the solid waste fund, but in all honesty, that can't continue. Eventually, we will have to make some tough decisions there, and we would rather get in front of that in the next couple weeks and bring forward some options. At this point, we're masking the fact that we're not covering everything because we're dipping into the fund instead of raising rates to what would cover the cost of that business. But we Craig mentioned it on Thursday, I think, of last week, or Monday of last week, but we're going to bring forward some options that we want you to consider. But from what we can tell, that line of business, or that line of our operation has to change one way or another, because what we're doing right now isn't sustainable. Questions about any of those pieces of information or any of the budget requests that are in front of you?
I have a question about the solid waste, because we just had a rate increase a year or 2 years ago, and that rate increase was based on buying a new truck and doing some other parts of that. So even with that income coming in, we're still falling behind.
Correct. We've essentially maintained where we were. Are you talking, this is the truck from 2 years ago? Is that the one? It was purchased. We had a plan to borrow roughly $330,000 this year to purchase another truck. We have not purchased that truck. We do not plan to borrow that money at this point. But yes, to answer your question, we're essentially maintaining where we were before.
Okay. Because one of the major concerns also with that increase is the fact that we have to have funding in place for the C Street cleanup. So that, I'm assuming, will be part of the discussion when we're briefed on the options.
It is something we've been very cautious when we look at what the options are, that it is a high priority for us to make sure that we maintain that fund.
One of the things I talked to you about is that we had budgeted for these increases in water and sewer, and I just want to go on record that I have continued to fight to not see these increases. And so what I would like to do is I'd like to see if we couldn't go back to the drawing board, and I would like to see the city of Shelton have 0 water and sewer garbage increases, okay? Now, based upon the information I've gotten over the past 2 weeks, I would probably accept cutting this number in half and just know I did the best I could with the citizens of Shelton. We have financial obligations and things that are unraveling, which needs us to take a serious look at not cutting any funding. But this is at least an attempt, it's at least a statement that says we know that we got to find funding sometimes in other places rather than continuing raising them water and sewer and garbage rates, because I think it's extremely something that's important to the citizens, something we have been working on, something I have tried to keep stable. So I would like to bring this whole thing back a week from now and see if the department couldn't see about the possibility of cutting those increases. If there isn't someplace else in the budget or whatever, but I just know that if you want to talk about the word priority, when you have a mother at home trying to feed their kids and they get in their bills and they got these increases coming, you know, I think that's who we got to take a look at. So anyway, that's my request, if we have a concurrence for possibly doing something like that.
I don't know what the impacts would be, but we can take a look and see what it would do to reduce it or leave it where it is.
I have been thinking about this as well, and I wonder how difficult it would be to go back and check the numbers that the increases are based on. I mean, it seems like we've had some false information and not real accurate numbers. So I wonder if we could go back and just check those calculations to determine if the extent of these raises is necessary.
I can't promise we can have all that done by next week, but if you're okay, if we need to push it out 2 weeks, I think we should be able to. I'm saying this because our finance director, who's sitting in the crowd, starts.
Right.
I know. Welcome aboard.
Is she here tonight? Oh, hi, how you doing? Well, I don't care, and we have time if we push it out 2 weeks. I think this is a priority with the citizens, and it has been, and we've been talking about it. And I think we need to look at how that and what that, all that means, and have as clear a record as we can, because my personal feelings, I would like to cut that back as far as we can.
If you can give us 2 weeks, I think we should be able to get that information back.
Okay.
I have a question. Now, it's, when we start, I know I asked this a couple weeks ago, I think Craig said he didn't have any numbers for me, but do we see our sewer fund help, the biosolids helping our sewer fund financially?
So we'll never make a profit. So I guess a couple things. We won't make a profit, but we are looking at the potential that that money can be, it can be used to support the fund itself, the debt that we have to pay back. So to help out the fund, yeah, I think that's fair to say. You agree?
Okay, all right.
When we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks, obviously making sure that we can handle whatever is brought forward in terms of biosolids is number one concern. But before we bring anything to you, we obviously can't lose any money, and that's a priority.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I guess at this point, let me take a look and see. Yes, at this point, we need, if there's anybody who wants public testimony about the 2017 budget, we would love to hear any comments or testimony concerning the 2017 budget. So do we have anybody that signed in for that? Okay, so if anyone would like to, it's an action item. Please come forward, sign in, so we can move the meeting forward as fast as we can. So if Randy wants to speak on this, come forward, sign in, and speak. Please.
Where I signed in didn't count.
Another issue. We have three separate piles. Three separate piles. Oh, did she say counted?
I just had a quick comment, and I've mentioned this to Commissioner of Finance and others. And maybe it's already been done, but you can't present everything. On page 6, you've got, the general fund, tourism, all the categories, and then you have a column of expenditures, and then you have a column of revenues, and it's the same number. That doesn't really give me information other than say that the money for your expenditures comes from somewhere. What would be helpful to me and other members of the public, I think, is of the expenditures, what is the source of revenue? And if there's a shortfall, what is the shortfall? And then where does the shortfall funds come from, like, sewer fund or this fund or that, whatever reserve fund? That would be very helpful. Because all this says is that this is what we're planning to spend in these different areas, and we're going to get the money from somewhere, which, we already know. So anyway, that's my quick comment. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, next is Marilyn Vogler.
Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. I see in this general fund requests, it's page 8 of the packet, the porta potty project is way down at the bottom with $0. This is an important project in our city, and I hope, Mayor, that you recall when we were discussing the budget last year, you made a comment that you would make a personal contribution. And as you said that, and I will meet your challenge. And so I want to challenge all 3 of the commissioners that if we cannot include the porta potties in the budget, that the 4 of us personally contribute what is necessary to continue this project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Just a point here on that is that I believe I was told that of the 3 porta potties, 2 of them had been removed. Does anybody know the facts about that? Do you know that, Marilyn?
All 3 of them were removed by AAA. We're currently negotiating with Island Johnny to return them. And so we expect them to be back. I don't know where the contract is, but we got a contract that we're working on.
Thank you for the information.
Yep.
Okay, any more comment on the 2017 budget? Hearing none, at this point, what I think I would like to do we need to make mention of the fact that we want to give this a 2-week extension, or do we do that after we close this?
We didn't expect action today, so I think that
We're okay. So at this moment, I'm going to close this public hearing and return to our regular meeting, And it was mentioned in the public hearing that we were going to take a few more weeks to look at a couple of items on the budget. So that's what we're going to do. Are we ready for a reading of the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
We are. Could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, vouchers numbered 13119 through 13185 in the amount of $131,406.06.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I will make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay, there's a motion.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as read. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The agenda passes. Now, next is the action item agenda, but we have nothing on that tonight, and so that moves us into old business, and this is a conversation about the Simpson Roundhouse and rail operations. And before we start this, lots of people are here to speak, I'm sure, about this issue. And so what we want to do is turn it over to our city administrator, our manager at this time, and he's going to give us a little bit of information before we move forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. In front of you have follow-up answers to 5 of the questions that were asked at the last meeting. So in the packet, anything that's bold and underlined is new information. I thought it might be helpful just to look through some of the key points from what you see in front of you. As you'll notice, the staff recommendation didn't change from 2 weeks ago. We're still recommending that you decline the roundhouse, direct us to obtain the railroad property, and then ask for us to convert that to a trail at some point. From the information we can find in late 2015, so a little over a year ago, discussions began between the city and Simpson regarding the potential ownership of the roundhouse and the rail property. We can see that toward the end of 2015, Simpson worked to pay for a consultant to come on board and do a feasibility study for the roundhouse. That was worked on in the summer of 2016. They brought forward, right before I started, I think they brought forward the feasibility study. So a lengthy document, about 70 plus pages, that detailed the information that you see in this briefing. So financial information about the roundhouse comes from that document. So the dollar figures associated with those options we pulled from that feasibility study. In October, November, December, we as staff have asked for direction from the commission. We are going to need specific direction so that we can work on one component. There are essentially 2 offers here. There's the railroad and there's the roundhouse. We made a recommendation in November for option 4, which we are again making today, and that again is to decline the roundhouse, obtain the railroad, and then convert to a trail, multi-use trail. Some of the facts that we used when we were making that recommendation: 1, we have been offered the properties, but SPI, who's now occupying the Simpson property, they have an option to potentially take that property if they see it fit and have a use for it themselves. So it's not as simple as us just going and taking it. The cost estimates for the museum at this point aren't a fiscal reality for this city. That would be a fairly large undertaking. Even if we were to move to mothball the roundhouse, it would still be a decent amount of money that we'd have difficult time coming up with. I think it's important to note that Simpson has offered the roundhouse not to us as a straight donation. They're offering it to us contingent on the fact that we indemnify them for any liability. So that could be environmental liability, it could be any operational liability on the site, but it's not simply that they're going to give it to us. It would be that we assume liability for their properties. To date, staff have not received any commitment of funding from any outside sources. We have not spoken to a formalized support group, so I know prior meetings, other recent issues around town have been discussed. I think that it's important to note that we haven't seen that formalized group come forward. We don't have an identified and seasoned fundraiser that is identified to us at this point. The environmental impact for that site, in particular the Roundhouse, is undefined at this point. We haven't paid for a study. I don't know of any study on the environmental concerns at the Roundhouse. To obtain the Roundhouse or the rail will be a lengthy process. Tonight, we are going to move forward with acquisition of some land that we worked on with the SR3 Park and Ride project. Once we had a plan in place, it took us 2.5 years to get to tonight with that one. So similar to that, this is a lengthy process in large part because of the steps that have to go through. Anything that we accept either through purchase or through a donation has to go through a very rigid process in order for us to ever be eligible for federal funds with that property. This would be just like that. This would be a lengthy process for us to go through. What to obtain, one, we would have, at this point, we would have to indemnify Simpson for liability concerns. We would likely then have to hire consultants to assess the environmental concerns and to lead us through this acquisition process. We're doing that now with the SR3 land acquisition. We would make sure that we're doing that, as I mentioned, so that we're eligible for federal funds, either for Rails to Trail or for some other project. And then we also need to take a look at what improvements are needed for the rail if we decided to go that way. The information that you have in here about maintenance on the rails and potential cost for maintaining the current rails, those come from Simpson. They've done studies for their own use in recent years. Certainly, if the commission decides to move forward in using the rails for something other than a trail, we would need to bring somebody on board to assess what that's going to look like for whatever project it would be moving forward. As I mentioned, the staff recommendation hasn't changed from 2 weeks ago, but if you do have any questions, we can try to get them answered now.
What we have tried to do as a kind of like a rule like is that at these points, we want to make sure the public has an opportunity to give their testimony first, and because that gives them an opportunity to weigh in on this. And I know there's a lot of people that want to talk about that. So I guess our manager assistant, Vicki Look, was just going to kind of go over the ground rules on how we're going to try and get everybody to speak that wants to speak. So.
Yes, I do have 2 letters to read into the record, as well as several individuals who have signed up to speak about the issue that the commission is considering tonight. So I just wanted to remind everybody that there are folks in the audience who are in favor of the commission's vote to take the Roundhouse and Railroad, and there are those that are not, that do not think that it's in the city's best interest and the community's best interest to take this. So I would ask that you remain considerate of everyone and the commissioners and city staff and the public as they speak. And remember that, you know, we are here and it's the commission's policy that we all treat each other with respect. Everyone will have 3 minutes to say what they'd like to say, make their public comment. And I ask that if you are have the same opinion as someone before you, you can simply say that you're in favor of the city's accepting the donation, or that you don't think it's in the best interest, and we can make it a little more convenient that way for everybody. So I will start with reading the letters that I have into the record, and then we'll go into the public comment. This letter was submitted by Melanie Bakla, and she is a Shelton business owner and property owner at 821 West Railroad. And she says, "Dear Commissioners, I would like to provide input of the decision you will be making tonight about taking ownership of the Roundhouse. In theory, taking ownership to preserve the Roundhouse seems like a great idea. Who doesn't love the idea of a railroad museum? But this isn't the time, and the Roundhouse isn't the place. This would be one of the worst financial decisions you could make for one reason: the environmental liability that comes with this property. By taking ownership of this property, the city will be required to take on all the liability risk. Even if groups are willing to come in to take on the expense of creating and operating the Roundhouse, the city of Shelton is still responsible for their environmental liability. We can't afford to do this. We finally have high-quality leadership in our city with Ryan Wheaton and the great people he has promoted and brought on board. Over the past few months, they have discovered numerous projects where we have accepted grant requests and spent some money and then not worked on them for years. The city is going to have to pay back over $400,000 on the Pear Orchard project, which is the right decision. We spent millions to provide water pressure to the State Patrol, and we now have no one utilizing it. We spent millions to increase water capacity and pressure to Ingleside, and the system we invested in doesn't work. Commissioners, ask yourself, why did Sierra Pacific not purchase that part of the property? Why is Simpson so willing to give it away? We need to carefully consider this question. We cannot afford to make another decision that will cost the city money. We need the city staff to be focusing on moving this city forward. Taking ownership of this property would be a financial albatross around our neck.
Can everybody hear her? You can hear her okay? Good, very good, thank you.
The next letter is to the City of Shelton Commissioners, and it is about the railroad roundhouse, and it says, ladies and gentlemen, my schedule does not allow me to attend commission meetings very often, but I do have some thoughts on preserving the Simpson Roundhouse. I have a 4-decade interest in the Simpson Railroad. Starting in the mid-70s, I often spent time observing Simpson operations and photographing Simpson equipment. The railroad is located just 1/4 block from my back door, and I miss the railroad very much. I have a lifelong interest in railroads, and many years ago volunteered on the tourist railroad operating out of Snoqualmie. Thanks to the internet, I have an international correspondence with others of like interest around the world. I can say that there is a great deal of interest in the Simpson Railroad, not only throughout the United States, but in Great Britain, France, Australia, and New Zealand. Perhaps other countries as well, but those are the ones of which I am aware. My wildest dream envisions a logging railroad museum in the Roundhouse and a tourist railroad out to Mill 5 site, and a logging and mill museum there. My wildest dream sees Tolly restored to operating condition and pulling those tourist trains. There are no technological or logistical barriers to those visions and would be a great tribute to Shelton's history. It is a great vision, but would represent a substantial financial risk. But even the most modest vision, such as the Railroad Museum and the Roundhouse, requires a great deal of money. Just the environmental cleanup of the Roundhouse site could run into tens of millions of dollars. The city does not have that kind of money. Given the financial condition of the city, it would be irresponsible in the extreme to borrow money against such a financially risky scheme. Unless an outside group could be found that could finance the project and assume the liability for the environmental cleanup, I cannot support the city's involvement in attempting to preserve any aspect of the railroad. If there was some inkling of outside funding becoming available, I might be in favor of mothballing the Roundhouse. But nowhere in my correspondence do I find anyone with the resources willing to step up to the plate. With great sadness, I must take this stance that assuming any responsibility or ownership of any part of the Simpson Railroad on the part of the city would be financially irresponsible. Reg Hearn, City of Shelton resident.
What was his name?
Reg Hearn.
Oh,
Okay, so now we have the list of people that want to speak.
We do. Heidi McCutcheon.
Heidi McCutcheon, 215 West Railroad Avenue. Mayor, Commissioners. Over the past decades, perhaps even further, projects have been started with incomplete budgets, understanding, and an understated scope of work. Just last week, you made a very tough decision to pay back funds that had been borrowed for Pear Orchard Park. Although it was an extremely difficult decision to make, it was the right decision. And from what I understand, the state actually said it's the best decision that they've seen the city of Shelton make. Preliminary numbers show this budget to be in the tens of millions of dollars. There is no understanding as far as the scope of work, what it could entail. Should it be taken on? it seems that it would fail like many of these other projects that you're looking at. Some of the things that I've heard proponent taking on this project, such as tourism, jobs, which are two things that the chamber is very interested in, I don't think will counteract or balance the fiscal responsibility that you will have on your hands to take this project on. In a perfect world, it would be great to be able to preserve and even rehabilitate the Roundhouse and make it a place, providing that it was in a different location. The location itself is another thing that should give you pause to take on this project. It's interesting to me, not only professionally, but in my personal life, my friends will often ask me about issues and things that are being talked about, especially when they are controversial, with very strong feelings for and against things like this. I've been very surprised that my friends haven't asked me anything about the Roundhouse or which way I fall. They have asked what will happen with their water, sewer, garbage bills, and if there's any relief from those costs moving forward. There has been also much interest in a rails to trails conversion for the railways itself. I think with that, especially federally and statewide, safety and transportation are two big things that the government is willing to give out money for. That seems to be a safe bet that can provide some recreational opportunities for our citizens that won't saddle them with more debt. This is the first time that I've heard your staff and administration counsel you against taking on a project. I think that says something very strongly, especially when it would be ideal. In ending, please don't take on this project. We don't have endless funds or bottomless pockets, and our citizens have been saddled with enough debt. Thank you.
Excuse me, Heidi, is that statement representing the entire chamber board?
It is not.
This is your statement?
Correct.
Bill Busaka?
Bill Busaka, 612 West Birch. Well, I come up here totally biased. I'm a lifetime model railroader, and I'm the chair of the Shelton Historic Preservation Board, so there you go. You know where I'm coming from. You know, we've already lost the Catholic Church and the Brown Gym. You know, we've lost 3/4 of the manufacturing base in this town. And we're trying like the Dickens to get this town to be attractive. You know, I mean, as the young man said earlier about it would be nice to have condos and marina down on the waterfront, but that's not a reality right now. We need anything we can to kind of boost the city up and that sort of thing. So I'm going to speak in terms of preserving the Roundhouse, just because it's one more facet of all the things that we need to do in this town. Now, I know that everyone is concerned about the toxic indemnity. You know, we have to indemnify Sierra Pacific and Simpson. I'm looking at Durango and Silverton Roundhouse in Durango, Colorado. It's been there since 1881. It's no farther away from the Animas River, which flows all the way into the Colorado River, than this Roundhouse is from the Sound. It's been there for years. I've been following that railroad for decades, and I have never heard of anything about them being hauled before the EPA or anything else for toxics and that sort of thing. One of the things is it's a designated historic site, and you know, if we could get historic designation for the Roundhouse, that might mitigate some of the issues about the environmental concerns. And the other thing to think about is the diesel and the oil and all that kind of jazz is substantially less toxic than the dioxin out there in the C Street dump. I mean, let's put it on a scale here. Whatever's there may be some toxic stuff there, but it's nothing like the C Street dump at all. There are a number of lessees that would do this. The Durango and Silverton Railroad, which was once bought by a Florida orange juice millionaire, he ran the railroad and made a profit. They have recently bought, he sold it to someone else. They're still making a profit. They have recently bought the Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad. They will run that for a profit. This is entirely possible. The large railroads have been selling off small branch railroads all over the country, and they get bought up by companies who run them for a profit. So I understand where Ryan Wheaton, our city manager, is coming from in terms of right now he's juggling more balls than a guy in the circus and trying to do his budget and all this kind of jazz. I have a lot of sympathy. I don't want to dump this in his lap. I would just like the commission to think about saving it for the time being. If nothing else, I mean, he certainly doesn't need to manage this railroad. Certainly doesn't need to figure out how to fit it into his budget. Certainly, it would be nice to give it some time to figure out if there is some group out there that would lease it, manage it, run it, and if the historic preservation could be designated to it so that it could be saved as part of our history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Johnson.
I was just going to say a lot of things that were already said. I'm not in favor of the buying or acquiring the roundhouse for a lot of the same reasons. I think it'd be redundant if I went over it. I would just say that if you look, when I look through here and the staff gives you the, what is it? The recommendation, I think they're spot on this time. So I think that speaks volumes to what the, what you guys should think about doing. So that most of my stuff was already said, so thanks.
Thank you.
Allison Bowen.
Allison Bowen, 190 East Smith Cove Way. Well, Dr. Basaka covered a lot of the points I was going to cover too. But anyhow, I know it's, you know, I talked to Ryan this afternoon, and I talked to Gary as well, and they told me about all the problems that we would have. But I look at it and I think, you know, further down the road, Shelton is not going to be in this situation we are right now. Hopefully with the commissioners we have now, things are going to go forward and they're going to be better. But I think that if we could accept the roundhouse and the tracks, the railroad, and just hang on to it for the time being, and then further down the road, we could probably do something with it or find somebody that will. But, you know, it's part of the Shelton history. We don't have much history left here. It's either getting torn down or, you know, taken away. And that's a big part of our history right there. And I think if we accepted it and could hang on to it for the time being, you know, and just not do anything, and eventually, you know, things are going to look better around here. You know, it's not going to be a depressed city forever. But I don't know. I just hate to see anything like this. This is an opportunity that many cities don't have a chance to have. And I assumed that Simpson was going to give it to us. But at the same time, to mothball it for the time being, if it's going to cost some money, Sierra Pacific might step in and donate some money or something like that. I don't know if we've talked to them about that. They want to be part of the community. That would be something they could work with us on to work with the city to help with our historical preservation. You know, we've given them some breaks as far as the permits and all that stuff on their side. So, you know, maybe they can do something for us on the side of helping us, you know, accept this and be able to mothball it for the time being until we can do something. But anyhow, that's my opinion, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Olson.
Mike Olson, I think that the environmental concern is a little blown out of proportion. If anybody's driven down on Front Street and seen what Sierra Pacific is doing within 300 feet of the waterfront and was permitted to do, the amount of asbestos and other contaminants that are in those large buildings they're tearing down is going to be any worse than the roundhouse, I think it's a real, it's a scare tactic. For one, I believe that the code is written that if you're not disturbing the structure itself, you don't have that same concern, and I don't see that you're going to have to do any real destruction or demolition on the roundhouse to be able to mothball it, for one, and two, to convert it over to some sort of a museum. I really believe also that what Ryan was saying, that there's no group came forward. Well, you can't really have a group come forward until you own the project, and to be able to establish some sort of a committee, and I recommended that a couple of weeks ago, to be able to sit down with all the entities involved, the railroad, SPI, Simpson, the county, EDC, all these people, and that hasn't been done yet. So I really think that until you do that, sit down with as many people and players to come forward, you can't make the proper decision. You're making a decision based on rumors and people's personal thoughts. Until you can get the right people sitting at the table to tell you, no, we're not going to fund that, or no, there's an environmental concern, I think you're making a decision, a staff decision, a staff-driven decision that doesn't even have all the facts. Thanks.
Mary Hartline? Oh. Okay.
You have to come to the podium. You'll have, because you're signed in, it's okay. Just come in, state your name for the record, and then go ahead and speak.
My name is Mary Hartline, and I reside in the city limits of Shelton. I just think that the decision, to make a decision tonight would be premature, and I would only ask that it be set aside so maybe some further investigating could be done. I know that there's private plus federal grant funds available for different projects. And I would like to know a little bit more about the EPA and the sorts of things that they would be looking for and the expenditures out of other projects that are similar, have been completed, and what they've anticipated through those projects. So that's all I had to say. I'm neither pro or against right now. Thank you.
Josh?
Good evening, Josh Kaivo, former Simpson railroad mechanic. I'd like to thank Mike Olson for bringing up the fact about the environmental indemnity. I believe he is correct in stating that if the building is remaining intact and the purpose does not change, that there's no concern for environmental cleanup or anything like that. You're even still under Department of Interior 106 standards. You're still eligible for grants for National Registered Building funds for continued repairs and that type of thing. As long as you're not changing the physical aspects of the building, you're just repairing it and maintaining it in kind. That is the status quo there. The question has been brought before me: how would the city benefit from having the roundhouse and the railroad? Obviously, the first answer with the questions of accessibility of the roundhouse is, well, the roundhouse wouldn't be a very valuable asset. I would tend to disagree in that statement, because a tourist railroad excursion service could be provided to the city. Again, this could be outside investment, not the city itself owning and or operating and maintaining this enterprise. But a good friend of mine, Stathi Pappas, who has a Master of Science in Industrial Archaeology and is a railroad preservationist by trade. He's worked for several tourist railroads over the years and recently took a job as vice president of an undisclosed tourist railroad until the press release has been made. He sent me some numbers from the state of California Tourism Department that for a heritage attraction, tourist attraction, there is a multiplier value that for every dollar spent at a tourist attraction, an additional $2.56 is put forth into the community. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you figure a tourist railroad with a ridership of about 20,000 people per year at $20 a ticket, that brings in close to $1 million a year into the local economy. That is a huge benefit to a city that's lost a lot of jobs, has lost a lot of industry. It's maybe not, the end-all, be-all boost that you need, but it is a very, very positive change. Again, going back, I'm kind of jumping around here a bit, but going back to the environmental concerns with the Roundhouse. It started off, in the first 40 years or so of the Roundhouse, it was probably pretty rough. But starting in the 80s, the floor drains in the pits, they were capped off. There has been oil containment set up for all the oil storage. There is not a whole lot of additional contamination going on there. Is that my time? I guess I'll close with that for now.
Thank you.
Daryl Lund.
Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners, it's
We
nice
like
to be
you.
here. My name's Daryl Lund. I'm from Chehalis. I'm a 17-year city council member, and I'm still on the council. You guys have an opportunity you don't realize what you have. We have a tourist railroad in Chehalis that brings in 20,000 riders plus a year. And as Josh said, that turns into a lot of money. I agree with the gentleman about the being a former port commissioner for Chehalis, the thing about the contamination and all the ecological stuff. If you don't mess with it, you don't have to worry about it. And it seems like in my past life of a port commissioner, you can't pass things on. If you're the agency that has something and you mess it up, you can't pass that off by federal law. You're responsible no matter what. So I would check into that before you listen to what somebody says. Also, you were told that nobody's come forward. Well, somebody did come forward and offered to take this on and run it, and wouldn't cost the city a dime. And nobody gave a rip. So there are still people out there that are willing to help. This thing could be a self-sufficient, the Chehalis Railroad is self-sufficient in Chehalis. Plus, people say that somebody called from the commission called Chehalis and they were told several $1 million get spent on the track a year. Well, that's not true. The railroad pays for the track themselves. They maintain it. They take care of it all. The most the port has ever spent is about $300,000 when we had the big flood in '07, and FEMA paid the rest. But the county commissioner supports the railroad with the distressed county funds, and the city supports it with tourism funds, but it's pretty much self-sustaining and brings people into your community. And you could have the same thing here. Thank you.
Pete Replinger.
My name is Pete Replinger. 6 days ago, I circulated a petition around town for preservation of the roundhouse for historical preservation. I was instructed to bring them all in, turn them in this morning to the city manager, but he wasn't available, so the city clerk volunteered to take them and copy them, and I instructed her to leave a copy with each commissioner. I understand this wasn't done. So I'd urge the commission to table this decision another 2 weeks, and maybe it could be handled correctly next time.
Thank you.
A correction is that I did make the copies, and
I did get my copy.
I got mine.
And
Oh, were they up in the mailbox?
Yes.
Okay, I just didn't get mine, Pete. The other two commissioners got their copies.
All right.
that was the last person who.
That is,
We have
okay.
somebody
Well,
else.
maybe we have.
Just come and sign in and you can speak.
Hi, my name is Nathan Iverson. I'm from Gig Harbor, Washington. And what I have here is information from an individual who owns a passenger car that I am asking him about the possibility of acquiring it for use. And whether or not individuals are aware of it, there is movement to acquire equipment and to support the railroad. Things are moving forward, whether you're aware of it or not. And this is proof. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. If there's anybody else who'd like to speak, now would be the opportunity, but I will accept one or two more. So if anybody wants to say anything else about this, if not, this is the opportunity. Okay, go on. Well, you've already spoken once now.
Spoke about something else.
Okay. Come on up. You're already signed in. I don't know if you're signing the right thing or not, but go ahead and speak.
Well, I'd like to support the people that want to support the efforts to put it on hold for now. And if the railroad couldn't be saved, it sure would be nice to have the railroad track be turned into a bicycle trail. There's nowhere good to ride a bike in all of Mason County. The shoulders are small, and there's lots of rails to trails. So if we couldn't get the railroad, it sure would be nice, or the roundhouse, it sure would be nice to get the railroad track for a bike trail.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now is our opportunity to talk about this situation again. And so I would like to turn the meeting over to Commissioner Moore and see if she would have anything she'd like to say.
I do have something to say. I agree with those who questioned the environmental issues. I mean, that's the big argument I'm hearing this week. It seems like the arguments against have changed from thing to thing. This week, it's the environmental. And so I checked with someone I had met at a conference in October who is the person who runs the Brownfields Department of the ecology in Olympia. And I checked with her because I knew that she had told me that she wasn't concerned about that site, that they weren't anticipating any cleanup needed at that site. And in fact, today she told me that she looked up the file for that area, and it said NFA. It's categorized NFA, which means that there is no further action required on that property. As someone mentioned, the pits have been encapsulized, so unless we were to go digging into the pits and looking at the property or the ground underneath that, we may run into issues that would require another testing to see what exactly was there. So I'm not sure exactly how this has become the big topic, but it is, as far as I can tell and as far as EPA can tell, there is not an issue there. So I think that's a really interesting thing, and that makes me certainly feel a lot more confident in moving forward on this. I also have one of the things that we've also been told is that the liability would be an amazing amount of money, and we couldn't possibly afford the liability. Well, we have willing operators that are willing to come lease the properties run the projects, and they will have their own liability for their businesses. I think that the city probably, and I don't know this, but I think that the city probably would still carry liability on the crossings and the rails if we were to own those, because we have liability insurance on all of our properties. So that's not a huge, big surprise. And I have not checked into the amount of the liability insurance, so I'm not sure what that investment would be. Recently, I have heard it suggested that it would just solve all of the problems if we salvaged items from the roundhouse and built a new roundhouse somewhere else to use as a museum. That is so impractical, because the cost to build an actual roundhouse would so far exceed what we would need to put into this one for maintenance, for repairs. It would be astronomical. This particular roundhouse has 6 working pits, and the pit is this big, deep things, and these guys are going to make faces at me if I'm wrong, but they're really deep pits where they drive the train onto the pit, they take the wheels off, and then they can work on the train from underneath. So it's a quite complicated and solid building. There has to be a lot of infrastructure there to hold the weight of the building, to hold the weight of these train cars running in there. So it's not an easy thing to build a new roundhouse, and I think that the cost would far exceed what we're looking at now. I've talked to Jerry Inslow of Simpson about the cost that were quoted for the mothballing. And he knows the building well, and he said, well, why don't you just let it sit? You don't have to do anything with it for a few years, and you can, in the meantime, work for funding for that to get it mothballed, and that will happen naturally as we start repairs on the building. I have a lot of things here. So the bottom line as well is that you can't rebuild our history. You can't rebuild this building. This is an important building for our city. We have embraced a logo of a train for many of our celebrations, for many of our pictures. Many of the things Shelton is known for is Simpson and the train. So it is, I believe that we really need to take that into consideration too, because that has value. That has values to our citizens, that has values to the face of our city throughout the region. We have interested investors and interested operators that are willing to come in, willing to lease, willing to take this project on. They cannot do that unless the city takes the property. Simpson is willing to give the property to the city. So it's like we have this great potential, and oh, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to have a going business operating here? But we could also take that away, take that potential away just by refusing to step outside our barriers and be afraid to take it. There are a number of historic railroad museums and rail excursion trains throughout Washington. So if we look beyond ourselves and look beyond these issues that we are facing, the Simpson, Shelton Roundhouse Museum and rail could be a very important attribute to our state as well, because we would have an amazing nexus in the state for attracting rail tourism if we were all state-of-the-art museums and offered these different opportunities. The $29 million price tag that we've been quoted for the Roundhouse is based on an idea of a state-of-the-art museum being completed. And, you know, who knows if we ever would get to that. But as we have a working museum, we have people learning new trades, we have pride in our community, we have unlimited opportunity. We could do a rail business without the Roundhouse, but what kind of sense does that make? There needs to be a base of operations, there needs to be a focus or a center, and it would add so much to the project. Our heritage is so extremely important. Our ability to put a positive face on our community is so important. An option to build and keep our identity is the most important. Otherwise, we are losing what we have been built on, and our foundation has been taken away. I do want to say, I know that Pete had gathered signatures in just a few days from people who are in favor of this. And I will say, I asked the question on Facebook, social media last night, and I have had over 100 people say, yes, do it. And some of them were not initially favorable, but as they asked questions and I answered the questions, I've been working on this for a year and a half. As I answered their questions, they became more comfortable with it and are in favor of it. And none of us think it's going to be a simple thing, and it is going to be a change. But I feel like we need to do this. We need to listen to the community. The only person of those 100 that responded to me was Melanie Bacala, with the same arguments that she made in her letter, which she has a bit of faulty information in. So I think if we're really, really wanting to do what the community wants, I really think moving forward with this is what the community wants. There are many, many potential projects and many, many potential good things that could happen that I haven't mentioned all. And what I would say too is I would love if we could set up a meeting so that I could have the potential funders, have the state agencies come and answer questions, because I feel like there are too many misconceptions in this product. And so I, for one, would love it if we could, as far as the Roundhouse, take a step back and get more input. And I would hope that you would want more information as well. So that's my statement. Sorry it was so long.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Moore. So, Commissioner McDowell, you have some thoughts on this?
In a minute.
Well, I have some thoughts. And the thoughts are, there's no simple answer, but there's a dream, there's something that could be good, that might have potential, but the reality of where we are financially as a city, we have used up all of our options. That had we not had so many projects and things that we are literally in the process of turning down because we did not have the foresight or the finances or the wisdom to move forward and complete them, that I don't represent the people on my Facebook page. I don't represent the people who come and talk in a group setting. I represent every single citizen inside the city. And it's been said time and time again about how important is the roundhouse compared to how is important to projects like paving streets or being in control of water, sewer, and garbage bills, or making people's lives safe by having police protection. We have gone too far, I think, and that at the moment, it would be foolish for us to take a financial risk. The environmental thing, not my high priority. It wasn't the idea that put a cancel for me. It's just that we have continually made decisions as a city to step out and try and do things that we didn't complete and didn't have the finances, and things just didn't add up. So my comments are exactly like they were 2 weeks ago. I would easily vote for option number 4, decline the roundhouse and convert the rails to trails. We have talked about this for a long time, and I am responsible to the citizens of this community to, in the best of my business experience, look at something, and if there's too much risk, which there is, the answer is no. I cannot do that. So my decision has not changed over the past 2 weeks.
Well, I have some thoughts, and I wrote them down, so I would like to read them because I always go away and go, oh darn, I wish I'd said that. So I wrote this down. I've been thinking about this for several weeks. I've been doing a lot of talking and thinking about the subject of the Roundhouse. Key individuals, business owners, and citizens of Shelton. Keep the Roundhouse for a museum or tear it down. There are individuals who want this for a museum to protect the history of Shelton. I totally understand that, totally. I grew up in Shelton, and my ties are all around Shelton. I have ties to Shelton. I visited the Roundhouse when I was in grade school. But let's get real and logical with this subject. In front of me, right here, 338 signatures. The majority says from Shelton. I'm not sure if they're residents or not. But there are some people from Great View, Union, Matlock. We have people from Allen, Hoodsport. We have people from Aberdeen, Elma, Seattle. We even have somebody, I think it said Oregon, in Olympia, Elma. My question is, do those people pay their city taxes here? Do those people that want this railroad, do they pay city taxes? Do they pay their water, sewage, and garbage rates each month? Those people that live there, they do not. They don't have a financial stake having a railroad here in Shelton. A roundhouse. I'm not dissing the railroad part, but as far as the roundhouse goes, they don't have a financial stake. I'm not even sure if those people would come to visit a roundhouse if we had one. In front on this signature paper, it says Shelton City Commissioners have no current plans to accept the roundhouse as a donation to the city from Simpson Logging Company. We, the undersigned, respectfully ask the City of Shelton Commissioners to accept the donation of the roundhouse from Simpson Logging Company for future historical preservation. I have a couple questions from those people who signed. Was any information given to them on maybe the environmental underneath? Was any information given to them that it may end up dumping back in the city's lap and the city's financially responsible? Did any of those questions, were those points brought out to these people that signed this, or was it just, we need this roundhouse and we need it for history, and would you please sign it? And I'm not sure exactly if that worked that way, but that's what I'm kind of getting. Are all the signatures from tax-paying citizens, voting citizens of Shelton? As I studied, there are many signatures. They're not all from Shelton. I have to ask what stake those out-of-towners and out-of-state people have with wanting to save the railroad, the roundhouse. Do they pay the city taxes? Do they pay the sky-high water and sewer bills? Do they see us struggling day to day? I think the answer probably is no. We as a city are fighting projects that were never carried out or done with millions of dollars of our taxpayers' money. Projects pulled and sending money back to the federal government because it will cost more money to finish. Projects that do not work, and here we are again having water tanks to nowhere built, standing unused. Now let's ask ourselves, do we financially want the roundhouse? If we take it from Simpson, we are on the hook to clean the ground, and people are saying there's nothing underneath. We don't know that. There is not 100% proof that there's nothing in that ground. You have to have it cleaned up before you can have public presence in that roundhouse. You cannot have that toxic under there, if there is any, and open that up to the public to pass through. And then how do we as a city pay for the cleanup? Do we all recall the C Street dump and what we are paying for that cleanup? Why do we want 2 toxic cleanup sites with the dollars to follow? We do not. I do appreciate, Tracy, I thank you very much for your passion on this. I can see it, but thank you. In all good conscience, I cannot see saving the roundhouse for historical preservation. It's not going to be an economic booster to the city. I don't feel that many people would come make a special trip just to see a roundhouse. I'm not saying nix on the railroad, on the rail tracks, rails to trails, but I can't in all good conscience say I accept the roundhouse. So those are my.
No. No, sir, we have a policy, we have rules, everyone had, I went several times to make sure everyone had plenty of opportunity to speak.
I just said some misinformation. There's much misinformation. It's not fair for you to vote when she's just saying something that's not true, that the roundhouse has to be cleaned up before people can go in it. That is not necessarily true.
This is not government.
Please do not vote on misinformation.
Sir, this is not government by public outbursts. This is public government by elected officials that give the public ample opportunity to say what they want to say. And we gave everyone ample time to speak what they wanted to say. And that is how we've done this. And that's what we're going to do. So at this point, we will continue to hash this out. These commissioners have the authority to speak out. I will say what Kathy said is, and this is not against the gentleman that put the petition out. I mean, if you got passionate about something, you want to put the petition out. But I read, and I noticed some names on the petition. I thought I might just, I said, how come this gentleman is supporting this? I mean, he doesn't, he's continually giving me complaints about how much he's paying in water and sewer and garbage bills, and that the city needs to not fund the stuff. So I called him up and I said, okay, did you sign the petition? He said, yes. I says, okay. Did they talk to you about, what it meant to save the roundhouse or save the rails? He says, no, I was just sitting around the coffee table at the restaurant, and, some guy said, hey, look, they want to, tear down the roundhouse. And so I thought, oh, gee, that's not, and he said, and I says, well, here's where we are financially. Here's what we got to do. Here are some of the potential risks. And he immediately changed his decision. That was just one of the names. And that's not someone from Elma. That's a citizen in here in the city of Shelton. So that's why I have to be a little cautious about petitions, just saying, hey, do you want to save the world? Obviously, we'd all say yes. So that was the first phone call and the only phone call I made concerning the petition. Now, we are being civil. We are trying to be civil and run this meeting and follow the rules. So, Commissioner Moore, you had some comments you wanted to make?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. I would like to reiterate the fact that I don't know where all this environmental cleanup hysteria is coming from. The people who knows are the people that work for the brownfields and keep the records, and they keep records of sites that they're concerned about. This site they have looked at, and they said there's no further action required unless the building is dug up or we decide to do some major remodel to that. It is true that it does not have to have any environmental cleanup before people are allowed in there. That is true.
Okay.
It's okay for people to go in there. There are at least 13 separate entities who have stated that they would be interested in funding this project. They're different. There's EPA, there's Commerce, there's Rural Development, there's oh my gosh, my mind went blank. SERB, there are other entities that I have met with. DOT is really interested in funding railroad repair, which is interesting to me. And when you think about it, this type of project does take a burden off of many of our city and county roads. If we have extremely heavy freight, there is also the freight portion of this that is a valuable resource. We also are looking at this as being not just a shiny bauble that Tracy thinks would be nice to have. We are looking at this as something that is valuable to our community, that adds economic development, that adds a tourism draw, that adds jobs, that adds potential for new careers and new training for people who would want to be employed or schooled in a working roundhouse. It's a serious thing. It's not just a fun, flippant thing. And if we lose this opportunity, we will be ridiculed for losing this opportunity and for letting go of a National Register eligible property, one of 2 roundhouses in Washington State and one of the few that is still operating. It is amazing to me that we do seem to have more buy-in and more people from outside our city who know the value of this. I don't know if it's because we've all grown up with it and don't appreciate it and don't understand the rarity of this opportunity. But I'm really hopeful that we can have an opportunity to dispel some of these myths about the roundhouse, and also to give an opportunity for the other commissioners to meet with the people from out of the city who are willing, excited, and feel there is so much value in this project.
We have 3 options here, it looks like, before us tonight. It appears that Commissioner Moore is open to obtain the roundhouse, option number 2, and the railroad, and mothball the roundhouse. It appears that Commissioner McDowell is open for option 3, which is decline the roundhouse and obtain the railroad to explore a rail business. And I am open for option number 4, which is decline the roundhouse, obtain the railroad, but convert the railroad to a trail, because that's something I can see as a financial possibility for the city of Shelton. That's why I would do that. Okay. I am open to move from option 4 to option 3. In that, then, I would be in agreement with Commissioner McDowell if that's where her position is. Are you at option 3?
I'm at option 3.
Okay.
I want to see a possibility of rail business if possible.
All right. So I am open to move my option 4 up to option 3, which means it appears after this hours-long conversation, we have 2 commissioners that are willing to vote tonight on option 3.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I would like to suggest that we break it up and vote on the rails separately from the roundhouse. Because I would be in favor of the rails, obtaining the railroad and exploring the rail business.
Well, that's in option 3, or, yeah, option 3. That has
Yes,
that.
I know, but decline the roundhouse is also in option
Right.
3, and I don't want to
Right.
be in
We-
favor of that.
Right, we know that. But we have a motion. We have a motion that it appears 2 commissioners are willing to vote.
There has not been a motion.
No, we would have a motion. If there was, I would entertain a motion for option 3. So I would entertain a motion for option 3.
I move that we obtain the railroad, explore the rail business, and look further at the roundhouse.
In my print here, it says, is there a motion to approve option 4? No, there's not a motion to approve option 4. For guidance, our city manager, maybe you could interject a little bit of what do you call Robert's Rules of Order here?
I think you had a motion, so if there's a second, you can vote.
Oh.
If there's no second.
Oh,
then
okay, she made a motion? Okay.
Motion's
At any
different
time,
than
you can
what's
go ahead.
listed there.
Yeah.
What was your motion again?
I move that we obtain the railroad and explore a rail business and further examine the roundhouse. So not vote on the roundhouse right now.
Okay. So there has been a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Hearing none, motion fails for lack of second. Okay. Now, could I entertain a motion for option number 3?
I move on option 3 and make a motion to decline the roundhouse but obtain the railroad and explore the rail business.
And I would make a second to that motion. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, there's a motion for option 3, which is decline the roundhouse, obtain the railroad, and explore a rail business. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I am opposed.
Okay. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, under new business is a subject about a Simpson land transfer, and this is going to be brought to us by our Public Works Director, Craig Gregory.
Mayor, Commissioners, I will try and keep this short. I am happy to bring before you tonight, after a very long time in the making, the land acquisition of a portion of Simpson Timber Company land located at the Pear Orchard originally for the Park and Ride project. It is important to note Simpson is not intending to donate this property, but instead to convey it in exchange for city indemnity. Staff requests that the commission considers the approval that the city enter into a real estate purchase and sale agreement with Simpson Timber Company to assume ownership of the property in exchange for environmental indemnity. For the purpose of establishing the sale price for the reason of real estate excise tax, the parties will use the appraised value of $10,000 and have agreed that the transfer is not exempt from REIT tax because the transfer of the property is not a gift from Simpson. It is receiving consideration in the form of city indemnity in exchange for the property. Staff requests that the commission waive the 3-touch principle in this instance and takes action on this item today, approving resolution number 1095-1216 and authorize the city manager, Ryan Wheaton, to sign the agreement on behalf of the city of Shelton.
This is an action item, and it appears here that we need to be open for some, any public input on this? Is that correct? Is that correct? We do have public input on this. Okay, so just sign your name in and please come forward.
Are you seriously going to sit here and accept a piece of property and indemnify the city for environmental cleanup after you just turned down one? Are you guys nuts?
Thank you for your comments, Mike Olson. All right, is there any other question, any other public comment? Seeing none. Seeing, okay, congratulations. Thank you. Here we go. We did have that civility clause in there. I don't know. Okay, you're civil. Okay, let's do this. Is there a motion to approve resolution 1095-1216?
I had some questions about that.
Okay.
This agreement is the agreement that has taken a long, long time, and this is the agreement that is to serve as the template for the railroad acquisition. Just to help everyone know why this took so long. And so the properties that we acquire for the railroad will not take this long, provided that it's still agreeable to use this template. I also see the irony, and I am aware of the frustration, but we have worked a long time to get this property acquisition. One question that I had is, does the agreement with Simpson still apply? I'm looking at it as far as the purpose that we were taking this property was for the Pear Orchard project and the entryway project, and so those projects are no longer happening. So is this agreement still valid, or do we need to tweak it if we are just taking the property to sit there?
Part of phase one of that project, and we are working with local programs to make sure that we can actually consider phase one complete.
Phase one is just the acquisition of the property?
That and the tear down of.
That and the removal of the old wastewater treatment plant and turning that lot into a gravel parking lot.
Okay.
The other question I had, I believe that didn't this property has had at least one study done on it that showed there were some drillings that were done on this property that showed no toxic waste?
That is true. There was an environmental study done on it, and it granted us the opportunity to flatten out what was considered Boot Hill and cap it with pavement.
Okay, so there was a study done.
That is correct.
And the cost of $10,000 for the property. If we acquire the property, it costs us $10,000.
No.
No.
The property will be given to us for exchange for environmental indemnity.
Okay, that's correct. But there's a $10,000 fee. What was that fee for?
There is no $10,000 fee. That was the
Appraised value.
appraised value that
okay.
we will use to assess and pay the REIT tax that would be associated with that property.
So, not to extend the argument longer than it needs to be extended, comparing apples to apples, this cost $0 and has had a study done. The roundhouse cost who knows what and has had no study done. That's why I feel that this is not an apple to an apple.
Just a
comparison.
small correction, it will cost us some because we will have to pay the REIT tax.
That's right.
And we will have to pay the closing costs at escrow.
Right.
So there will be a small fee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions about this?
How much did the encapsulating the soils, the ash, I can't remember, was that like a $10,000 bill?
At this time, I can't answer that
Okay.
fully. I would have to get back to you on that,
Okay,
but we certainly can answer that question.
okay. Great, it would have been awesome if we could have had a brownfields grant study this area so that we could know the facts about the potential cleanups that we would be looking at.
At this time, we need to have a motion on extending the City of Shelton Commission from 2 hours to 3 hours. There you go. Doesn't have to go the full 3 hours, but is there a motion to do that?
I move that we extend the City of Shelton Commission meeting for December 5th from 2 hours to up to 3 hours.
Okay. And then there's a second?
I second that.
Okay, the motion is second to extend the meeting before the deadline, and we've done that to meet our obligations. So we can continue on with this discussion. Is there any more discussion concerning this property?
I didn't get an answer. Do we need to change the language in here at all because the original intent was for the Park and Ride Pear Orchard project, or are we okay just to take it?
I think it would still be the intent of the city to, at some point, move forward with the Park and Ride project. We just need to take another look at that, get our strategic partners in line with the city's thought on what we would do with that, but I think it would be, with the plans and design already done, I think it would be in the future, the city would think about that Park and Ride once again. And as Ryan mentioned, we did complete phase 1 of the Park and Ride project.
Okay. Okay.
So that would be accurate.
Okay.
Okay, so here's where we are on this, is we need a motion to approve this resolution.
Okay, and that comes from the staff recommendation, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make the motion. I move that the staff request that the commission waive the three-touch principle in this instance and take action on this item today, approve resolution 1095-1216, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes, point of clarification?
A reading of the resolution.
Up, we need a reading of the resolution. Could we please have a reading of the resolution?
Resolution number 1095-1216, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Shelton, Mason County, Washington, ratifying a purchase and sale agreement transferring property owner by Simpson Timber Company to the City of Shelton.
Okay, now we want to do our motions again.
No.
We are done.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of this, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution passes. Item number J is administration report. I'll turn the meeting over to our city manager, Ryan Wheaton.
No administrative report tonight. We have one final touch when you're ready for that, though.
Okay? Any final touches?
We, in the next week, maybe 2 weeks, we will bring forward more information about biosolids. Since we spoke last week, we had 4 entities reach out to us. The Skokomish tribe, Squaxin tribe, Alderbrook, and Thurston County all reached out with interest in entering into interlocal agreements with the city to utilize our capacity to take on their biosolids.
Okay? Our next meeting will be December 12th, 2016 at 2 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.